Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best CEOs, entrepreneurs, and leaders within their given fields. Today, I'm honoured to be joined by Andrea Pinchen, who is the CEO of Leicester Tigers, having started her career out at AXA Health, spending 11 years at Emirates, and now nearly, is it 19 years at Leicester Tigers?
Yes, yeah, long time.
Yeah, she's been incredibly successful, helping the club to survive in the pandemic, winning the league with Leicester Tigers, and a huge number of other things. So thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Harvey.
Thank you. So I want to go back to kind of the start of the pandemic when you were first made CEO. What was that feeling like, and what was going through your mind when you were initially given the top job in the whole club?
I'm not sure that anybody at that point in time had any time to compute what was happening. You were just absolutely in the thick of it and trying to see your way through what was happening in the world. And I think everyone was like that in whatever guise. But so the pandemic really kind of rolled out at the end of March, didn't it? And I was appointed CEO in May, beginning of May. So we were really into the beginning of what does this mean for us? How do we deal with this as a business, as a club? What does it mean for our staff, our players, the fans, the survival of the club? And all I can say is that I hadn't heard of Zoom before then, but then I spent my whole life, probably certainly for the first lockdown and thereafter, on Zoom all day and every day, into the night, over the weekends, really just trying to work through what we were going to do. So I don't think the fact that I was CEO or I was given that role, it wasn't this is an amazing opportunity, thank you. It was more just ploughing through what was needed to do. And it was lovely because I had so many complimentary emails, text messages, WhatsApps, etc., which were really great. And I was like, oh yeah, thanks. Yes, yeah. I am the CEO, that's right. But it was more just really head down, trying to, in that survival mode for us all.
Yeah, was it a big, because you're already on the board as COO, so did you find it was a big step up taking that CEO role, or did you find you're already doing a lot of the things that you did as COO, as CEO?
Yeah, I think it'd be fair to say that because I came through Tigers on the commercial side of the club, and that when I was actually commercial director, part of what I'd done had been sort of coming over to the training ground because I was due to meet some of the coaches with regards to a sponsorship piece. And at that time, we weren't really performing very well on the pitch. And when I came into the ground, we were sort of compiling and putting together our 3-year commercial strategy. So I thought, well, while I'm here, I'll talk to the coaches about it. It was very obvious by the time I left that rugby per se is not my forte, but the management, the leadership piece, etc., that I just looked and felt that we were rudderless and really needed some direction. So I wrote a report after that and sent it to the board and the chairman, and basically just some overriding feeling was one of sadness that we've come from this great club, and all the accolades that we'd had. And that actually we were in this position where we had such good people but weren't really heading in any particular direction. And so they say be careful what you wish for, because instead of just sort of saying these are all the issues, I was like, this is what I see from a leadership perspective, and this is what I would do to rectify it, taking the rugby out. We've got enough people to focus on the on-pitch stuff. So of course they said, okay, here you go, you go and deal with it. So I suppose the transition from COO to CEO was more learning about the playing side and that role.
Sure.
And when lockdown was lifted for sport, for us to all come back in and be in our little close-knit group being tested every day, I came into the training ground, didn't go into an office. I just went and hot desked and would sit with each department and observe what was going on. And initially, of course, they're like, what is this woman doing? sitting next to me? Is she trying to look over my shoulder at whether I'm working, what I'm doing? There was this real mistrust, if you like. And I was like, I need to explain to you, I need to learn. All the people doing it, I'm coming to sit with you to do my job, but I can hear what's going on, so I can learn and absorb as much and as quickly as I can. So I think that transition time really helped.
Kind of linking two topics there. One with you kind of going around the club and seeing what people are doing about the club. Did you find that there was a bit of a disconnect between like the executive team and people kind of a bit lower down? And how did you rectify that? And then also, there were also, especially during the start of your time, there were leakages to the press in terms of people leaving, players leaving. How did you rectify that situation? Because when you're trying to lead an organization, that can be pretty dangerous when the outside world is hearing about everything before you can even get across what's actually happening. Yeah. So you get frantic people. So how did you go and fix that situation?
So I think the initial thing for me, two things and intrinsically linked. One was trust. From people that were actually doing the role towards me and the leadership team, if you like, and the board. And I think there've been so many changes within the training ground and a high turnover of coaches, etc. And I think everyone was just keeping their head down, scared for their job. So it was trying to instill and show that, look, just speak up. You're the ones doing it. You're the ones with the knowledge. I need to learn. I'll be open and I'll be honest. So it's very much trying to build that trust and then having transparency back with people to say, this is where we are, this is what we're doing. So one of the first things that I instigated when I was CEO was, because we were in lockdown, was having a weekly staff meeting. So all players, all staff could all jump on a Zoom at any given time. There would be me, the chairman, whoever else on the board. We're here, ask us anything. And it was even, are our jobs safe? And you'd have to say, at the moment we're working through that, we will let you know as soon as we know. The minute there were redundancies, like a lot of businesses, we had to make 30 people redundant, and we had to do all that over Zoom. And really without looking people in the eye and sitting down face to face. That's a hard thing to accept, but also for people to give. So it was really that trust piece and that transparency of saying, you may not like what you hear, but I will be honest with you and tell you each step of the way where the club is and how we're going to survive and thrive afterwards.
Do you think that, you mentioned trust and transparency, do you think that kind of that openness and kind of that straightforward, like talking to people and telling people how it is, kind of led people to trust you more and led to less leakages in the future of information?
Yeah, I think so. And also, I'd be very vocal about that, in and around the environment, that it's so frustrating having everything out in the press before you're able to deal with it, because it makes everything so much worse, because people are commenting on it. People are only seeing one side of the story. And of course, we're not going out to the press to say, this is right, that's wrong, that, I'm too busy putting everything right in the business, and dealing with and being upfront with the people that need that. So it was very obvious very early on that this lack of trust had kind of caused all these leaks to go out. And look, they still happen. And I think there's a whole connotation of people that are involved in anyone, because you sign a player, and obviously there's player, there's agents that are involved, there's people writing the contract, there's all kinds of people involved. So it's really hard to keep a lid on everything, but I think it has got better, and that people do trust what's happening inside and are tighter inside the club, so don't feel the need to go and talk to somebody else to say how bad it is,
Sure. Kind of on the talk of redundancies and players being cut, I understand it's a pretty difficult topic. But you asked for a lot of people in the club to take a 25% pay cut, and that led to some pretty key players leaving the club.
Yes.
What was that? I know we mentioned leakages before, but what was that situation like?
So everybody across the club, so playing and non-playing staff, all of us that were earning over a certain amount, were asked to take a 25% pay cut. And when I say asked, it was really a fait accompli because we needed the club to survive. It was sort of take a 25% pay cut or we'll all be earning nothing pretty soon because we need, our income stopped overnight. So that was hard. It was a hard message to get across to everybody. It was very difficult because at the same time as that, these redundancy process was going on, and it was a big, thorough process with that number of people. So that also was very difficult. And the players, we spoke to the staff and the players and did a financial presentation to them so that they could see exactly where the club was and what we were trying to achieve by doing this. It wasn't just a case of, this is a good excuse to save a bit of money here. This really was survival mode. And I believe that the way that it was handled by all of us, we learned a lot of very valuable lessons very quickly. Would I do the same again? I'd do the same actions again, but I would do it in a much more consultative way. And I think that the way that we did it actually created some of the issues that we faced. I also think, though, that when you're in the throes of a pandemic and
it's not
business
easy.
alive, there's no management book that you can go and buy off the shelf that tells you how to do this, right? So were mistakes were made, absolutely, but I think also that was the catalyst to then say, pretty much we spoke to the players as groups, we spoke to them individually, I went to meet them face-to-face, one-to-one, to explain everything and get them to ask me anything you want to, and I'll tell you why we're doing it. And then there were the 5 that wouldn't accept it. And so we made the decision that couldn't have 5 people being treated differently, no matter who you were or how key to the club you were. Couldn't have that, because all this trust and transparency that we were trying to create and get everybody together to just undermine everything. So it was a hard thing to do, but a pretty easy decision actually to say, we can't accept this. If this is the situation, we can't carry forward together.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, although not an easy decision, you've done pretty well off the back of that, and you keep the majority of your players. But still, on the topic of survival, I mean, I saw a figure online that Leicester lost potential up to £10 million. Would you say that's an accurate number?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at every game, and you would typically have 2 home games per month, you're earning or you're generating circa between 400 and 500k, and with that income just suddenly stopping, we needed to reach out and say to season ticket holders, times are tough for everybody. People were on furlough, people were losing their jobs. But if you can afford it, would you consider leaving your money in? And you can either leave in ready for when we're back up and running, hopefully, or you can donate it. Or we will refund you, because obviously it's their money. And we went out to sponsors and did exactly the same, really, that this is a matter of survival. Would you consider leaving your money in the club? And we had those conversations, and the support, I have to say, Harvey, was just phenomenal. It really shows you how much the club means to the community at that point. And not that you forget, because ultimately, without the fans and the supporters, sponsors, we don't have a business. But it really hammered home just how important Tigers was to the wider community, the amount of people that supported us at that time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Being from, are you from Leicester?
Yeah.
Does it feel particularly special to be able to lead a club that you've probably looked up to for quite a long time?
Yeah, it's, I feel when we had a moment to look up and draw breath, I feel immensely proud and honoured to have been given this. I also feel the responsibility of it in a good way. It's massively exciting, and I think, I've been here nearly 19 years, or just over 19 years, and I think if you're stale and it's just like coming to work, earning your money, going home, I think that feels like a lifetime. But each step of the ladder that I've taken, it's kind of reignited my passion, and I get really excited to see the club survive, thrive. And then, one of the biggest things that COVID gave us, as much as all the hideous stuff that went on, and it did for so many people, it gave us the opportunity to stop and reassess everything here, and what was going wrong, and why was it going wrong, and fundamentally, what do we need to do? And I don't think, certainly in my lifetime, there has never been another situation where almost the world has stopped that allows you the ability to really look at that and analyse. So out of COVID, one of the things why we were going through survival, it was real key for me that we would come out of it at some point. Too sure when, but we knew we'd come out of it at some point, and we had to be in a position to thrive at that point, not just say, "Oh, okay, crikey, we've done all that hard work. Now what?" We needed to be in a position ready to drive the club forward to try and get a competitive advantage, like in any business you would.
What were some of the key takeaways that you took from the pandemic? I mean, hopefully there isn't another one in either of our lifetimes. What were some of the key lessons that you took forward if you were to be faced with another one in like 10 years' time or something like that? What would you do differently in that situation?
So I think the consultative approach, the transparency and the honesty, which came a little bit later perhaps than right at the beginning, because you're in the thick of it. I think that is really key. The communication of keeping everybody involved and telling people, there are going to be some tough decisions made. There may be decisions that you won't like, but all I can tell you is that I'll be as honest and as open about it and tell you in a timely fashion and be respectful while I'm doing it. So I think that's the big takeaway.
Do you think it made you as a club think of as you've shown with like the season ticket holders increasing your sponsorship, do you think it kind of made you guys more entrepreneurial and thinking outside the box of how can we keep this club alive? How can we make more money? And are there any of those sort of things that you've thought, oh, that's a great idea, we can use that going forward?
Yeah, I think you had to, didn't you? Businesses and families had to learn different ways to communicate. And that was quite interesting for us. And saying to sponsors, will you leave your money in? And season ticket holders, will you leave your money in? But we'll do X, Y, Z. So whatever that may be. We had, like everybody did, who didn't have a family quiz, right, over Zoom or something during lockdown. So we did that. We did some of that with our sponsors. We did some of that with our season ticket holders, with our players, with our staff, just trying to keep those pieces aligned. And actually it did bring everybody a lot closer. I think one of the biggest things was, we were communicating even via a computer. You're communicating with your staff and your players on a weekly basis, giving them the whole overview of the business. And that's something that we've continued, that those that want to know, we have a quarterly staff meeting conference where our strategy is rolled out and assessed and measured against. But equally, anybody that wants to jump in on any calls or be part of anything is able to do that, so that they're aware of what's happening across the business. So, for instance, our team meeting that the coaches will deliver to the players. If you're part of Tigers, you can go to that. So if you want to go and sit in there and see how we're going to play against Edinburgh on Friday night, there's a team meeting that will happen on a Monday and on a Tuesday as well. And both of those, if you're part of Leicester, you're invited to attend and stand at the back.
Do you ever get any like rival fans or coaches trying to sneak into the Leicester meetings?
No, it's one of those. If you're in, you're in. But if somebody was wearing a red top, we might just say, "Don't recognise that one. Who are they?"
I can disguise yourself.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? We don't at team meetings because we know everybody. But sometimes when we have open training sessions, we're like, somebody's going to be looking at what we're doing here.
Yeah. Going to kind of Leicester's performance now. So the season before you became CEO, Leicester finished second from the bottom.
Yes.
And there was also the controversy with the salary caps, with quite a lot of the clubs going way over, and Saracens being docked 35 points and also being fined a huge amount, as well as a few other clubs being fined.
Yes.
Do you think that was the right outcome? I mean, there was like an independent study saying that the result of Saracens being given those punishments was kind of disproportionate to the result. But I'm not an insider in this. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a fair outcome in your opinion?
I don't know the intricacies of the investigation. So it would be wrong for me to judge. I'm grateful for the outcome for Leicester, very selfishly. And it's something that, me and my counterpart at Saracens, Lucy Ray, who's the CEO there, we're very close and we do a lot of benchmarking together, and I've said to her, if it wasn't for that, we would have been relegated, without doubt. And that's a real scary thought, that this huge, big beast of a club like Leicester Tigers and everything that it's achieved gets to a position where, save for somebody else being penalised, we would have been relegated.
Leicester's, I think, one of the only three clubs that's never been relegated. Yes, are we right in saying that?
And you don't want to be part of a board, and you certainly don't want to be a CEO, should that happen. So everything that we're doing now, fundamentally, of course, we've got to work hard to turn the club back round after the pandemic to be a financially sustainable business. But our product, like any business, your core product is what's important, and ours is rugby. So we need to make sure that we're investing in that, we're performing well, we're constantly competitive and putting ourselves in a position to be competitive at the same time as, driving revenues and looking at the costs. And of course, in any sports club, the biggest cost is spent on your product.
Yeah. So going from second from the bottom and then around mid-table, and then you and Steve Borthwick coming in and then winning the year after, you must have done exceptionally well from across the whole club. So what was your and Steve Borthwick's relationship like, and the rest of the board? And because there was a reshuffled board as well. Yes. What do you think brought that change of direction? Were there any new players, or was it more the leadership team and kind of bringing everyone together and uniting them that you think to the eventual?
I think without being sort of non-specific about it was a part of all of that played a part. As I say, during COVID, it had really given us the opportunity to assess everything at the club and see what changes needed to be made. And so the chairman made changes at the board level, and we became a smaller board that was able to be more effective in the way that decisions were made, and more timely in the way that decisions were made. Before Steve started, I met him a fair few times for us to start working on, how things were going to be implemented, and not forgetting he was going to come in as an assistant coach, and we had a different head coach in at the time. And I think all the way through from when he joined in July to the January 2021, there were decisions made and changes made all the way through that time for us to really start pushing forward with what we wanted to do. I think our board composition was really effective. Our change in structure and the leadership team was more effective. Our recruitment became more effective for players, and very much based on a depth chart that Steve and myself head of recruitment and finance director would all sit and put together to sit and say, right, what positions do we need? What style of player do we need? And let's really do our homework on it, rather than signing somebody on the say-so because they thought he was good or he played well for them. It was a lot more analytical, as you'd expect for those that know Steve Borthwick. Very detailed, very analytical, but very effective, and still using that knowledge and gut instinct as you know, somebody that's so successful in rugby as he is, as well as the analytics that go with it. So, and everybody else off the pitch, everyone was pulling in the same direction. Everyone was clear on their role. And I think that's really important. Simplify it, make sure everybody knows what they're doing and why they're doing it. And we, you know, we're all heading in the same way at the same time.
Yeah. Amazing. So kind of on that basis, you mentioned you had a 3-year commercial plan, but
yes.
I'm going to presume you also had a plan with the club that involved Steve Borthwick, and then suddenly he gets called up by England. Did that kind of break your hearts, or were you more happy for him, or was it part of your plan in the back of your head? Did you have a
So obviously publicly, I have to say I'm really happy for him. And I've told him this as well. I'm really happy for you, but you know, it's a great accolade for him. You know, it's something that it's his dream job, and he made no, you know, he didn't hide that fact. I knew that that's the job that he wanted at some point. So, and you know, he's outstanding coach, and he will be outstanding at that. But it came earlier than expected. I always thought if I was the RFU, my next coach, whenever that may be, would probably be Steve. And therefore, I was preparing the club for that eventuality, but not until after this coming World Cup. So it kind of, you know, it kind of came a bit left field, and like, right, okay, great, thanks, RFU. So the timing of it was a surprise. But fortunately, we had since the summer previously, I was like, at some point, the RFU are going to come calling. I need to start getting my succession planning sorted. And I thought, rather than just sit and wait for the RFU to contact me to say, can I talk to Steve at whatever point, I reached out to them and said, I'm sure that your succession planning is going to affect my succession planning. So can we talk? Can we meet? And can you tell me, is Steve in your eye, you know, your sights for the future? And do you know when that will be? And what does that look like? So I can start planning here. So we had a couple of conversations, one meeting. Still then, you know, the dates weren't specific. They were still looking after the World Cup. But we started to work with, we have a company that we work with called Oval Insights that do a lot of the analytics for us on player recruitment. And so I engaged them to work on coach recruitment and have a look at all the stats, all the criteria that we were looking for. So our style of play, our fit, what kind of coach were they, forward centric, back centric, you know, that everything that we could sort of analyze on. We put this whole data sheet together, if you like. They fed it in and then graded everybody, and it came out with a whole list of coaches and where they fit on the scale. Then we did a lot of research on references. And then I said to Steve, right, I've got a short list of 5. You're going to go at some point. How do you feel about talking me through this short list and giving me your opinion? That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking you to choose your successor. I'm not asking you to make the decision. It's not yours to make. But with that rugby brain, I'd be stupid not to use it. So would you give me an insight as to your thoughts, which he did. I'm very grateful for. And then we worked from that. And once it happened with Steve, it was disappointing that Kev left at the same time. And obviously disappointing that Wiggy and Alid are also going. So you're losing your top line senior staff. But you know, we've made headway with that. We've recruited Dan McKellar, which really excited about him coming in and making his mark, as is he. We had several Zoom calls with him, interviews, and went over to meet him and the family, because for us it's really important. He's making this big decision to move his wife and 2 daughters over to Leicestershire from Brisbane, and I need right, and I need to make sure that they know what they're coming to, and that we can help them settle into the country as well as the club. So we had a meeting. That's all gone well, and we're building his team around him as we speak.
Yeah, I was going to kind of on that with Richard Wigglesworth coming in as head coach. I would think, or I think a lot of people would expect Leicester to not be doing that well. I mean, that big overturn, you've got this plan with Steve Borthwick. But I was just double checking. You're currently third in the league, so potential contenders. But if Richard Wigglesworth is doing so well, would you ever consider keeping him as head coach, or is the decision final was changing no matter what, even if Leicester were to do exceptionally well this season?
No, we spoke to Wiggy was on the shortlist. Because what we did, we had a look at all the head coaches around, but also assistant coaches that could make that step up. And Wiggy very much was on the shortlist, and we spoke to him about it. And at the same time, we were contacted by England to say, can we speak to Richard? So in discussions with Richard, it was like, where are you in your career? What is it you want to do? He has been absolutely outstanding for us. He has took the mantle. He gave up his outstanding playing career one day, and literally the next day was our head coach. And he'd gone from playing with all these guys to actually then being their boss and trying to make that transition with the weight and the emotion of finishing his playing career. So, I've got absolutely nothing but great admiration for him and respect for what he's done and how he's done it as well. And how much he's grown into the role. So he knows very much, as does Alid, that the door at Leicester Tigers is open for them. Hopefully they have a hugely successful career with England, but when the time's right for them to look back at club rugby, that we'd want to talk to them for sure.
So where is Richard Wigglesworth going? What's he?
So he's going to England so he's going to join Steve and Kev Sinfield. Oh wow! So he's going to England to be their attack coach. And Alid Walters, who is our head of conditioning, head of performance rather, he is also joining England. So he was with South Africa for the last World Cup and won a gold, as Steve won a silver. So obviously that was quite amusing at times in here. And he's made a massive impact for Leicester. In getting the guys fit, really to the peak fitness, but also his personality and what he brings. He knows when to have that light relief and lift the environment. He knows when to, it's hard work time. So both of those. So Steve and Kev left December time, and then Wiggy and Alid, who are our other 2 senior coaches, are joining England from the 1st of June.
Yeah. How do, because I guess they're the ones actually playing, how do the players feel about so much transitioning over the last three years? Reshuffled board, new CEO, coaches constantly changing, all of the coaches constantly changing. How does that make the players feel, and how do they maintain their focus on still playing so well and staying loyal to the club?
So one of the things that we instigated when Steve joined and I was CEO was that if there was any non-rugby specific, so non-coaching messages that were big club messages to go to the players, that I would address the players in the team meet at the beginning of the team meeting with Steve. So I would impart the news and be there and be around the training ground for them to ask anything that they wanted to ask. So initially, obviously, it was a lot of it was about cancelled games. We're training for a game, but then the team would come down with COVID, so they couldn't field a team. So are we travelling? Are we not travelling? What are we doing? So a lot of it was all around operational stuff. And then the finances. And so the piece around Steve going, I think everybody, all the players expected Steve to get the role and said he was let go. I think they were shocked at Kev, but Steve told the players and Kev told the players after a game in December that they wanted the opportunity to tell them themselves. And so in the changing room post-match, they imparted the news. Obviously, it was quite a shock to the players, and it's all gone quiet. And then I just step up and say, right, tonight is about you celebrating all your achievements and celebrating Steve and Kev and being with them and the group of everything you've been through and what you've done. And then on Monday morning, I will be in and I will be addressing you as how we move forward and carry on with our season. So everything is about this continuity. So again, on Monday morning, so over the weekend, I spent time with Wiggy. What do we say? When do we say it? How do we say it? What's our messaging going to be? And then get the team together Monday morning. This is what's happening. This is what we're doing. And we will be starting a search of which Wiggy will be part. And we will let you know as soon as anything happens before anybody else hears about it.
Amazing. It sounds like you're very on it from the start. It sounds pretty impressive. So I guess
it doesn't feel like that the whole time, you know.
Even I feel like I know what's going on. So kind of moving forward with the club, with a new coach coming in next year, what are the goals for, say, the next 3 years of the club, both playing and also you mentioned sustainability?
Yes.
What are the goals for the next 3 to 5 years or even longer for the club?
So for us, the end goal is to be consistently successful, and that you're not going to win everything every year, but you've got to be in a position to be able to compete to win, and that's the minimum criteria that we want on the pitch. And I think our players and our coaches and the dedication and the people that we've got, and Dan coming in, that's what they want to achieve. They don't want to just compete, they want to be able to compete to win. And that's the critical piece. And off the pitch, we need to make sure commercially that we're driving revenues, that we're looking at costs, controlling that to get to a sustainable business, but a business that is able to support the rugby to be as effective and competitive and successful as it possibly can be. That's the goal. It's as simple as that, she says.
Yeah, sure. So my last guest was called Ruben Narlingham, and he owns QPR Football Club.
Okay.
And he also owns a club called LAFC. So one in England or UK and one in America.
Yeah.
And one of the fascinating things that he told me was the average spend of a person per game. So someone at QPR would spend around £3 per game, whereas someone in America at LAFC would spend around $50 per game, which is around £40.
Yes.
So on the topic of kind of the commercial side and trying to grow the revenues of the club,
yes,
how do you think that, I guess a lot of the sports in the UK, how do you think they can adopt a similar strategy to the clubs in the US to kind of increase the average spend per fan to kind of grow the sport? Have you got any sort of thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it starts, with the online purchase, and that you make sure that your online baskets are feeding you into other opportunities, events, the retail shop, whatever it may be, of course, and linking everything through there. One of the other big pieces that we're doing is that we're there's a hotel built just next to our ground. So there is between us and them, there is this huge plaza area. So we take that over on a match day, and we have all kinds of games and food stalls and everything out there. So what we want is a longer dwelling time for people that come on a match day, so that their spend does increase. We're pretty good from a rugby perspective. We're averaging between £6 and £7 per head spend on a match day, And you just constantly want to push that.
Yeah.
So when you have street food vendors that you can bring in, different inflatables and games and themed match days, and I think that's one of the big things that America does really, really well, that it engages its fans to come for the day and have an event, and the sport is part of their match day experience. So it's a whole experience rather than just 80 minutes of rugby. And then also some of our areas will have bands in their post-match, or places to eat post-match. So you want those that can come early and those that can stay after, and just to increase that dwelling time. We're opening underneath the hotel, actually. We're moving the shop out of the stadium just across this plaza underneath the hotel into a much bigger area that will enable us to put a big coffee shop in there as well. So again, that's getting people in there on a match day or non-match day, and to say, right, if you want to go and sit down and have a coffee while I do loads of shopping, then we can do that. So
yeah, exactly. Kind of moving, actually two last questions on the club itself. I saw a few years ago that Leicester Tigers went up for sale for around 60 million, and then I believe that didn't go through. What's the plan with the club's ownership going forward? Are they still planning to sell it, waiting for the right person, not wanting to sell it?
No, it's at the moment we're in a strong position with our shareholders, and our two major shareholders, both on the board, and they're really supportive of the club. So I think fundamentally for us now, the key thing is to make the club, as I say, continually successful and sustainable, financially sustainable. We all took big loans from Department of Culture, Media and Sport during COVID. Then we had a 2-year holiday repayment holiday, sorry, and then now that's kicked in. So we need to start paying that back. So we've got all these debts to clear off, and we need to actually make sure that we are a viable, financially sustainable business, and that's the focus of us and the shareholders at the moment.
And my last question, sorry, not last question, but last question on the focus of the club. On women's rugby, what's the plan with Leicester's women's rugby? You mentioned me before the call that it might be going professional. Could you talk me a bit about the women's rugby at Leicester?
Yeah, so we're really late to the party with this, and it's something that we all feel really strongly about, that we should be fielding a women's team. We field a men's team, our academy. We've got a wheelchair team. It was time for us to get ourselves into the women's game as well. So we partnered with a local club, Lichfield, who have a lot of mini and juniors coming through in their ranks, and so we took on with them in partnership the championship this year, and we're delighted to say that we had a storming success in our in the playoffs.
Congratulations
for that. The women did brilliantly for the first time that we'd actually put a team together and competed. Now it'll be a little bit of a difficult challenge next season, because you have to bid to be allowed entry into what is the Premier 15s. So it's not aligned with the men's Premiership. It's a completely separate entity. So you have to put a bid in, complete, as I say, reams of paperwork, and then be called for an interview to talk through your proposal, your strategy, and how you're going to grow the women's game, and what you're going to do specifically for the professional team. So delighted to say that the guys have done so well with that, and we were accepted into the Premiership 15. So next season
congratulations.
We'll be competing in the Premiership, and I'm not saying that we'll storm that one as well. I think we'll have a few hard, tougher games to come, but it'll be great because it's bigger and more challenging competition for the women to get stuck into.
Amazing. So last few questions on the Premiership itself. I see you've previously mentioned making it a 10-team Premiership.
Yes.
And then I'm also curious on your thoughts about ring fencing it, i.e. having no demotion and promotion.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on those two things?
So the whole concept about moving towards a 10-team league was to negate the crossover in games between club and international. Because in an ideal world, you want your players available to play for you in every game and not to be away for a huge chunk, especially as you look towards next season when we've got a World Cup as well. You know, our England internationals and other internationals, but specifically England internationals, will be away a lot longer. So it was seen to be a key requirement for the Premiership in order for the Prem to grow and drive revenues, that you really need those international players to be performing on your own stage. So that was a key driver for that. But look, I'm open to anything that will allow us to have less crossover with the international so that we can drive those audiences into both games, both the Premiership and the national team, because I think one should complement the other, not go up against each other. Doesn't really make sense to me. And with regards to promotion and relegation, there's two things for that. You know, I was always for relegation. I thought it made things a lot more interesting until we were at the point of relegation, and I suddenly changed my mind and didn't want it at all. But equally, when I look at that, the amount of money that a club has to commit to playing in the Premierships, there's a lot of minimum standard requirements that we have to reach in order to participate, and the investment is huge. So the risk of then relegation after somebody or a business or a group of owners or shareholders have put that investment in, the risk to losing that money, I can understand why it's important that the Premiership is ring-fenced in order to protect that investment, especially now in the situation that rugby's in.
Sure. On your point about players with the 10-team Premiership and players being available for the Leicester games, I had a question about whether you think players should be owned by the clubs and then kind of allowed to play for like England, or where someone like Ireland, where they're centrally owned and then they're kind of let out to the clubs.
Yeah.
I'd be curious on your opinion on that. And then also on whether you think players outside of the UK should be able to play for England.
Okay. So I think, God, you're asking some really good questions here, aren't you? So firstly, I think that with regards to players being selected from outside of England, primarily, this goes back to us all working in partnership, which I'm not sure we actually all do right now.
Right.
And I think there is room for improvement on all our sides to make sure that happens. Fundamentally, the RFU manage the grassroots game. And the clubs have a lot of community activity where the clubs actually send people in to deliver grassroots rugby. So in that realms, we're working with the RFU. The RFU then manage the championship, of which the Premiership have players that aren't actually competing in the first team but are on the periphery that need game time. So we have a relationship, for instance, with Nottingham, where some of our players will go out on loan and play for Nottingham. So those two pieces, grassroots to the championship, is run by the RFU. You then get this breakout group of the Premiership that's run by Premiership Rugby. And then you get the elite game that is again run by the RFU. And it seems to me that everybody wants, so we need to rely on grassroots because we need players coming through into our academy, and we need game time from the academy. So we need to rely on the RFU to help the championship so they can get game time. The RFU need to rely on the Premiership because that's where they get their pool of players from. And obviously we want to feed into the national team, because we're really proud when any of our guys get picked to say, you've been coached really well, you've applied yourself exceptionally well, and you deserve your shot. So I think the whole piece personally should potentially, and it does have the opportunity to work more cohesively.
Is there any, apart from being proud of players, and it'd be awful to kind of hold someone back from international dreams, is there any monetary benefit? Like, do the RFU or anyone, do they pay you to have the players, or is it simply a case of we'll let them go? And then on that, have you ever thought about, even if you wouldn't do it, thought about keeping those international players to compete against other clubs when all their international players are away?
So yes, there is a financial benefit to it. So there is an amount of money that the RFU pay to the clubs for each of their England elite players, and no, we've never. And to be honest, it doesn't cross your mind, because ultimately it is this cycle of getting from grassroots up to the elite, and that's what you want any sportsman to achieve. So I think the frustrations of us competing against each other could be looked at, and how we resolve that. I mean, it's a minefield. I'm sure it's not an easy solution, but I think that that and I'm sure it is being looked at. But no, the whole pathway piece is really critical, because we want to say to all the youth, come into our academy. This is great, because what we're going to do one day, do you want to play for Leicester, and then do you want to play for England? And that's the dream, right?
Sure. Last few questions. First of all, what's your mindset throughout all this, running the club? Do you ever take time off? Do you meditate or go for walks or train, or how do you keep yourself sane and allow yourself to think of all these ideas, etc.?
So it's interesting. So I used to run quite a lot, and then suddenly work's coming at you left, right, and centre, and you lose that. And then I really notice when I don't exercise or take time for myself. So I've actually, within the last month, restarted to train. So I'll always do something, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's Pilates, whether it's going for a walk, whatever it may be, to get out and just clear your head.
Yeah.
Just it's that almost just look up occasionally, take a breath, take a breath.
Amazing. And then final question, what's next for you personally? Is the goal to stay at Leicester forever, get as many titles every year, or have you got something else in the back of your mind that you want to do in the future? Maybe go to another sport, another club, anything? What are your plans?
So ultimately for me, I think, the length of time that I've been here, I feel a very real responsibility, and not in a negative, heavy way, but a very exciting for me to do, but a real responsibility to make sure that our hangover, if you like, from COVID, the financial situation, and this continual competing for success is back at this club. When I first joined at the club many years ago, the annual trip to Twickenham was a given. So, you'd be like, oh, okay, here's the staff coach, and we're planning our day out, because we were in every final. And it may sound arrogant, it really wasn't. It was just just what happened. And then as that peters out, and of course the league is a lot more competitive, so it isn't our right to be there. But it's an expectation of our fans, and what we should be delivering is to be there or thereabouts to be able to compete and get us back on a really firm financial footing. And they're my goals for this club. I feel passionate about when I do leave, that's the position I leave this club in.
Amazing. So thank you so much for speaking to me today. I feel like I've learned so much. I mean, I was scouring the internet about anything I could find about you. I even kind of knew about your running hobby. I saw you did like a charity event 5 years ago for Leicester, and you raised, I think, over £1,000 or £15,000. Something was pretty impressive. Thank you for that. loved hearing about how the club's done. I mean, it's gone from second to bottom to mid-table to winning. You've had a huge number of different coaches. I find it really fascinating to hear about your more analytical approach to the game, as well as your personal mindset, your leadership style, and all of that. So thank you so much for talking to me today.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
Thanks, Harvey.
Thank you.